Hey there, amazing YouTube family. I'm Anime Dreams, and welcome back to my anime fanfiction channel. Today, I've got another exciting fanfic scenario for you. What if the Sage of Six Paths sent Naruko to New Rome? Get ready for an epic journey filled with action, adventure, and unexpected twists. Disclaimer: this content is purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's dive in. The aftermath of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. The Fourth Great Shinobi War had concluded just a few weeks ago, with Naruko successfully sealing away both Madara and Kaguya within the Geto Mazo. While peace now prevailed across the elemental nations, the effects of Kaguya's defeat rippled across dimensions, awakening an ominous force elsewhere. Mount Olympus, the War Room. In the grand chamber of Mount Olympus, a man with brown hair thoughtfully stroked his beard. His expression was serious as he said, "The Titanomachy has only just ended, and yet another prophecy has emerged. This is concerning." A towering, broad-shouldered man entered the room, his presence commanding attention. "Zeus, we have confirmation, Gaia is awakening." At the mention of that name, Zeus, now identified, paced the room with a tense expression. "Perhaps this is a consequence of our intervention with Typhon during the Titanomachy," he mused. "From this moment forward, I declare that all contact between us and our demigod children is to be severed, except for the right of claiming. Any god who disregards this decree will face consequences accordingly." A regal woman approached Zeus, whispering something into his ear. His eyes widened slightly in response before he nodded. "Very well, I grant your request to bring this individual here. They may prove invaluable in the coming days. However, you are strictly forbidden from interfering with our Greek and Roman demigods. I will not allow another conflict between them, Hera," Zeus stated firmly. "In order to bring this individual here, one of us must alter their essence and claim them. My brothers and I have already vowed not to bear any more children. The decision falls to the rest of you. If an agreement cannot be reached, my wife will have the final say." With that, Zeus exited the chamber, leaving the other gods to deliberate over who would claim the next great hero. Naruko's new apartment. Following the war, Naruko had returned home only to find that her old apartment had been completely destroyed. As a result, she relocated to a more spacious residence, offering her a well-earned moment of peace after everything she had endured. As the morning sun filtered through her window, Naruko awoke from a pleasant dream. She had dreamed of the war's conclusion, and of an unexpected moment. Ino had confessed to having a crush on her since their academy days, much to Hinata's surprise. However, Naruko had found herself unable to choose between them. They were both her friends, and she didn't want to risk changing their bond. Instead, she had offered to go on individual outings with each of them, hoping to explore her feelings without disrupting their friendship. However, before she could reflect further, she suddenly found herself drawn into her own mindscape, where she was met by all nine-tailed beasts, along with an unfamiliar figure. The mysterious presence stood confidently as the nine powerful beings regarded them with suspicion. With an amused whistle, the figure remarked, "Wow, I have to say, handling the voices of 9 different entities without getting a headache is quite the feat. Most of us struggle even with just 2. Naruko stepped forward, her sharp gaze fixed on the newcomer. "Who are you? Why have you brought us here? More importantly, how did you even get into my mindscape?" The figure chuckled softly and stepped into the light, revealing a radiant woman dressed in an elegant white toga. With a warm smile, she introduced herself, "I am Hestia, goddess of the hearth." Naruko narrowed her eyes and asked curiously, "Another deity? You're not planning to take my friends away or cause any trouble, are you?" As she spoke, her chakra flared, and the 9 Baiju stood beside her, their presence strong and unwavering. Hestia offered a warm smile and gently shook her head. "I'm here to seek your help," she explained. "In my world, there exist many kinds of immortal beings. The most formidable among them are the primordial gods, the Titans, the giants, and us, the deities who inherited the world after the Titans' rule. The recent defeat of this world's goddess, Kaguya, may have played a role in awakening a powerful primordial deity, our ancestor, Gia, the goddess of the earth. My queen has entrusted me with the task of seeking your aid. You are among the few who have triumphed over an immortal, and your strength could be the key to helping us restore balance. After listening to Hestia's explanation, Naruko turned toward the 9 and asked, "Do you think we can trust her?" Kurama spoke up, his voice calm yet firm. "I believe we can. She feels different from Kaguya, calmer, more gentle and welcoming, but at the same time, incredibly powerful. She is definitely not human. If her intention was to harm you and take us, I have no doubt she could have done so with ease." Naruko let out a quiet sigh, watching as the other Baiju nodded in agreement. Turning back to Hestia, she asked, "All right, I'll do it. But what exactly does this process involve?" Hestia offered a reassuring smile before explaining, "To bring you to my world, I would need to alter your genetic structure, essentially making you related to me." Naruko hesitated for a moment before responding, "No offense, but I'm proud of who my parents are. I don't think I'd be honoring them if I lost my connection to my mother's lineage." Hestia's smile softened. "That's the good news. After examining your genetics, I've found that you already share many of my personality traits. I wouldn't be replacing anything, just enhancing your mother's genes, allowing you to exist as both a demigod and a mortal. That way, you'll be able to survive the journey." Naruko couldn't help but ask, "So you're saying that if I don't become part god, there's a chance I wouldn't survive in your world?" Her voice carried more certainty than doubt. Hestia gave a solemn nod. "Exactly. We need to move quickly. If time flows the same way in my world, then the best moment to introduce you to the Roman Legion is in just a few minutes. Write a note or say your goodbyes." Naruko nodded before forming a hand seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Several clones materialized and scattered in different directions, ensuring her friends would be informed. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. "I'm ready." Power surged through the room, followed by a brilliant flash of light. Then, everything faded into darkness. New Rome Senate. A young, lanky teen burst into the grand chamber, his purple shirt slightly wrinkled under his legionnaire armor. His breath came in quick gasps as he called out, "Praetor Reina. Praetor Jason has just been reported missing." A murmur spread through the room, though the gathered officials remained composed. Reina, her expression sharp with concern, stepped forward. "What happened, Mike?" Still trying to catch his breath, Mike stammered between gulps of air. "Jason was last seen asleep in the barracks. Until he suddenly vanished." In a flash of light, Reina's expression turned grave. She straightened, her voice commanding. "Assemble the legion. If a praetor has gone missing, we need to act immediately. Deploy search teams across the city. If this involves demigods, whoever is responsible couldn't have gone far." Just as she finished speaking, a deep, resonating thunderclap shook the Senate. The very foundations of New Rome trembled. The officials turned their gazes skyward, peering through the glass dome above them. A swirling black void had appeared in the sky, crackling with energy as fierce winds howled through the chamber. At the center of the vortex, a golden glow pulsed and expanded. Reina's eyes widened in alarm. "Get down!" she shouted. The entire room hit the floor just as a massive explosion rocked the Senate. A deafening boom echoed through the halls, followed by a dense cloud of dust and smoke. When the haze cleared, the officials cautiously looked up. The sky had returned to normal, but in the middle of the chamber, a gaping crater marred the once pristine floor. Reina wasted no time, rushing forward to find an unconscious blonde-haired girl at the heart of the impact. Checking for a pulse, she quickly issued orders. "Take her to the infirmary, immediately. She's injured." As centurions hurried to carry out her command, Reina surveyed the scene. Scattered documents, shattered glass, and the 15-foot crater now dominating the Senate chamber all pointed to one undeniable fact: whatever had just happened was no accident. Something, or someone, had changed the course of fate tonight. The next morning, Naruko stirred awake with a soft groan, feeling as though she had just endured a powerful blow from an immense force. Again, the unfamiliar comfort of a bed beneath her was the first thing she noticed, followed by the hushed whispers of people nearby. As she attempted to sit up, a sharp pain flared in her head, but it quickly subsided, thanks to the chakra from her 9 partners. Still disoriented, Naruko tried to scan her surroundings, only to be met with intense blurriness clouding her vision. She blinked multiple times, hoping to clear her sight, and gradually, the room came into focus. She found herself lying in a bed, surrounded by a group of individuals dressed in unusual attire, all watching her with curious expressions. Rubbing her head, Naruko instinctively tried to stand, but before she could, a gentle yet firm hand pressed against her shoulder, urging her to stay down. A young woman with warm hazel eyes and light brown hair stood beside her, concern evident in her gaze. Naruko tensed slightly, her heart pounding as uncertainty settled in. Where was she? Who were these people? Her body tensed instinctively, ready to react if necessary. Sensing her unease, the young woman met Naruko's gaze and spoke in a calm, reassuring tone. Take a deep breath and relax. Just stay still for now. We have a few questions to ask you. Naruko felt the urge to panic but found the sight of the warm hazel eyes unexpectedly soothing. Taking a steadying breath, she propped herself up against the headboard and asked, Where am I? The group of individuals exchanged glances before a shorter, dark-skinned girl stepped forward and answered, You're in New Rome, a Roman city for demigods. Since you passed through the barrier, you must be part immortal or something else. Naruko frowned slightly and said, Could you avoid using the word monster around me? It brings up some very unpleasant memories. The girl nodded in understanding before looking back at a taller young woman, who then stepped forward and asked, What is the last thing you remember? Naruko pinched her chin in thought and replied, I was in my apartment when someone claiming to be a goddess appeared in a flash of light. She introduced herself as Hestia and started talking about something related to Gia rising and how she was sending me to her world. Next thing I knew, I was here. The group stared at Naruko as if she had just grown a second head. Finally, the tall young woman, Reina, spoke again. Hestia? She's the Greek counterpart to Vesta. I'm not sure what to think about your claim of coming from another world, but that strange portal you arrived in last night was unlike anything I've ever seen. When it comes to the gods, nothing is impossible. Naruko considered this. Given that some of her closest companions were giant, talking toads, she supposed stranger things had happened. Looking back at Reina, she introduced herself properly. I'm Naruko Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the 9 Bijou. The group exchanged confused looks before Reina asked, Bijou? Jinchuriki? I'm not familiar with those terms. Naruko's eyes widened in realization. If they didn't even know those words, maybe she really was in another world. She explained, Bijou are great-tailed beasts. Where I come from, there are 9 of them, each with a different number of tails. The more tails they have, the stronger they are. The most powerful is Kurama, my partner, also known as the Great Kyubi no Kitsune, the 9-tailed fox. I won't lie, he's got quite the ego. Just then, Naruko's expression shifted as her eyes narrowed, startling those around her. She called out to seemingly no one, Oh, be quiet, Kurama. You know it's true. Everyone else would agree, right, Edo? She then crossed her arms and pouted, mumbling something about how the Bijou weren't very supportive. Reina, slightly taken aback by the sudden change in demeanor, hesitantly asked, Naruko, are you all right? Some of the others in the room began whispering amongst themselves, murmuring something about her being odd. Hearing them, Naruko huffed. If you're going to talk behind my back, why don't I just let you speak to the so-called egomaniac directly? Fair warning, Kurama has a unique sense of humor. My eyes will glow red and become slit, but don't panic or call him a monster. He's sensitive about that. The group watched warily as she closed her eyes. Moments later, she reopened them, revealing exactly what she had described. Kurama's deep, amused laughter filled the room, his voice slightly different from Naruko's. Seeing the startled expressions around him, he grinned mischievously. "Greetings, mortals. You are in the presence of the mighty Kyubi no Kitsune. Bow before my greatness." Ha ha ha. A few members of the group yelped and rushed out of the room, shouting monster as they fled. Kurama immediately deflated, sulking in the corner before switching control back to Naruko. Naruko sighed and stood up, frowning at those who remained. "I told you not to use that word around him. Now he's going to be brooding all day." Reina, recovering from the surprise, quickly apologized. "We didn't mean to offend him. But that reminds me, you explained what a bijou is, but not a jinchuriki." Naruko corrected her, "Not jinchuriki, jinchuriki. It means the power of the human sacrifice. It refers to individuals chosen to carry a tailed beast inside them from a young age. I've had Kurama with me since the day I was born. The reason we avoid the word monster is because jinchuriki are often treated like the creatures they carry. I was ignored and shunned for most of my life, forced to endure constant glares, unkind words, and even physical mistreatment. I was kicked out of the orphanage at 5 years old and had to fend for myself ever since." The room fell silent, many of those listening looking uncomfortable or even saddened by her words. However, one shorter boy holding a staff simply asked, "Why were these bijou sealed inside people in the first place?" Naruko cast him a wary glance before answering, "Bijou are beings of pure energy and incredible power. My partner, Kurama, can level a mountain with a single swipe of one of his tails. The founder of our sealing techniques placed them within humans to either contain their power or use them as a form of defense." The shorter boy smirked slightly but quickly hid it. However, Naruko noticed. She narrowed her eyes and said flatly, "Don't even think about it, shorty. If a single bijou can destroy a mountain effortlessly, imagine the kind of force all 9 could unleash together. When they combine, they gain the power of something close to a deity, one of pure destruction." The boy muttered something under his breath before walking out, gritting his teeth. Naruko sighed again. This was going to be a long day. Reina turned back to Naruko and said, "I never introduced myself. My name is Reina, leader of the Roman Legion. We can discuss the Bijuu later. Right now, they don't seem like an immediate threat. However, if what you say about Jia is true, then we must prepare. And if the gods sent you here, there must be a reason for it." Naruko studied Reina's eyes and recognized something familiar in them. She made a mental note to ask about it later, but for now, she responded, "I have a theory about why they brought me here. It might be connected to my battle with Kaguya. She was incredibly powerful, her strength rivaled the energy I sensed from Hestia. I managed to defeat her, so I suppose that means I've come as close as one can to facing a being of godlike power." Many of those gathered stared at Naruko in disbelief. A broad-shouldered man with a scar over his eye stepped forward and scoffed. "You? Defeat a god? Ha! Now I know you're exaggerating." Naruko remained calm, unfazed by the doubt. "Who's to say what's possible? Stranger things have happened. From what I've heard, my arrival alone is proof of that. I literally fell from the sky like a meteorite, landed in a crater, and walked away with barely a scratch." The man hesitated, then stepped back, muttering under his breath. Reina spoke again, her expression thoughtful. "I'm surprised Terminus hasn't driven you out of the city yet. Based on everything you've told us, whether you're incredibly trusting or just incredibly reckless, you seem like a living weapon." Naruko frowned slightly. "I used to hide what I was, but after the war, I learned to take pride in it. I finally earned the recognition of my village, and now I find myself here, once again facing a new challenge. If I truly am here to help, then I will do whatever it takes to stop what's coming, and then, hopefully, return home." Reina offered a small smile. "We would be honored to fight alongside you." An older man stepped forward, his expression cautious. "Trust is not given lightly. We must discuss this with the rest of the council." Reina nodded. "Until then, The fifth cohort will keep her under observation. The man gave a curt nod before leaving to summon the other counselors. Turning to a dark-skinned girl nearby, Reina instructed, "Take Naruko to the barracks and help her get settled. Make sure she's comfortable until we reach a decision." The girl gave a respectful salute before leading Naruko out, allowing her a moment to change into fresh clothes. As they walked through the streets, Naruko's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she took in the sights of New Rome. The girl noticed and smiled. "You know, New Rome was built to honor the original, but we designed it to fit modern times while still preserving our culture. It makes the city feel like home." Naruko grinned. "I've never seen anything like this before. I've traveled a lot, but nothing compares to this place. If I ever make it home, I'll have to convince Ba-chan to remodel the village, though I doubt she could ever match this." The girl giggled. "I never introduced myself. My name is Hazel, Hazel Levesque." Naruko returned her smile. "Nice to meet you, Hazel." Hazel glanced back at her with interest. "So, tell me about your home." Naruko's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she began speaking. "My village is called Kanahagakure no Sato, or the village hidden in the leaves. One of my favorite places, besides Ichiraku Ramen, of course, is the Hokage Monument." Hazel tilted her head in confusion. "What's a Hokage?" she asked, trying to pronounce the unfamiliar word. Naruko smiled and explained, "It means fire shadow. The Hokage is the leader of our village and the strongest ninja in the land. Our continent is divided into different nations, but the five major ones are Kanahagakure, Kirigakure, Sunagakure, Kumagakure, and Iwagakure. Each village is led by a Kage, who serves as the military leader and ensures the village's safety and stability. However, the land itself belongs to the daimyo, who is like the ruler or government leader of the country. The five great nations are based on elements: fire, earth, wind, water, and lightning. While the daimyo provides resources and support, it is the Kage's duty to protect and guide the village." A soft, wistful expression crossed Naruko's face as she added, "I always dreamed of becoming Hokage. But as I grew and gained more experience, my reasons for wanting that title changed. I realized it wasn't just about strength, it was about protecting and supporting the people I care about." Her eyes glistened slightly, but before Hazel could ask more questions, she realized they had reached the fifth cohort's barracks. Smiling, Hazel turned to her and said, "We're here." As soon as they stepped inside, the room erupted with excitement. A crowd of curious faces surrounded Naruko, eager to learn more about the mysterious newcomer. Startled by the sudden attention, Naruko instinctively jumped, and much to everyone's shock, she landed on the ceiling, effortlessly hanging upside down. The entire room fell silent, eyes wide with disbelief. What? How are you doing that?" Hazel finally blurted out, voicing everyone's thoughts. Naruko blinked in confusion. "Doing what?" Hazel gestured wildly. "You're standing on the ceiling." Naruko glanced at her feet and then back at the stunned crowd. "Oh, this? Everyone in my village can do it. It's one of the most basic exercises for chakra control." The room remained speechless. Then, Naruko's lips curled into a mischievous grin. Wanting to lighten the mood, she quickly performed a series of hand signs. "Transformation Jutsu," she announced. In an instant, a puff of smoke surrounded her. When it cleared, a completely different figure stood in her place, a cheerful, blonde girl. Gasps echoed through the barracks as everyone stared in shock. The unexpected transformation left many in stunned silence, while others blushed in embarrassment. Naruko reappeared with another puff of smoke, doubling over in laughter. She clutched her sides, unable to contain her amusement. "You should see your faces," she managed between fits of giggles. Some of the girls, however, didn't look as amused. Their faces were flushed, and a few of them were tapping their feet impatiently. "That was so unnecessary," one of them huffed, arms crossed. Still chuckling, Naruko shrugged. "It's actually a great way to catch opponents off guard. I haven't met anyone who didn't react to it," she said proudly. But as she looked around, her confidence wavered. The girls were now advancing toward her, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and mild frustration. Naruko gulped. Now, let's not get carried away. It was just a joke," she said, inching backward nervously. The girls continued moving forward, unimpressed. I can show you something really cool instead," Naruko offered, waving her hands in a desperate attempt to redirect the situation. No luck. With no other options left, Naruko sent a silent prayer to whatever higher power might be listening. And then, with a dramatic cry of protest, she disappeared beneath the crowd of frustrated recruits. The room echoed with laughter, leaving no doubt that Naruko had certainly made an unforgettable first impression. The next morning, Naruko woke up and immediately jumped back upon seeing Hazel, startled. She quickly tried to explain herself, looking slightly flustered. Hazel, on the other hand, burst into laughter, which gradually slowed to a chuckle. "I think you've had enough of a surprise," she said with amusement. "Besides, we remember something you mentioned before we knocked you out, something you wanted to show us?" Naruko's face lit up with excitement. "Oh, right. If you really want to see, I'll need a large open space. I hope you don't mind if things get a little messy." Hazel considered this for a moment before nodding. "I'll talk to Reina about it. In the meantime, head to the dining pavilion and get something to eat." Before Naruko could mention that she had no idea where the dining pavilion was, Hazel had already disappeared. With a sigh, Naruko decided to rely on her backup plan, her emergency stash of ramen. She found a quiet spot and quickly enjoyed her meal before setting off to find a peaceful place to meditate. Mornings were her favorite time for meditation. Everything felt calmer, more serene. Eventually, she found a secluded hill with a large pond. Sitting in a lotus position near the water's edge, she began gathering nature energy. However, something felt different. The energy in the area was unusual, heavier, more unrefined, and harder to control. It almost stung as she absorbed it. After a while, she opened her eyes, only to find herself surrounded by a group of unusual beings, half human, half donkey creatures and girls in flowing dresses. Some of them were sitting close, even leaning against her, which she found rather strange. Looking down, she noticed that one of the girls had rested her head in her lap. Confused, Naruko hesitated before speaking. What's going on?" The girl resting in her lap instantly sat up, her face flushed, before quickly dashing back into the crowd. Another figure stepped forward and asked, "What exactly were you doing?" "We felt a strong pull coming from here, and we couldn't resist being drawn to it." Naruko blinked in confusion, trying to process what was happening. Just then, another girl stepped out from a nearby tree, literally emerging from it. "What? Are you all?" Naruko asked, tilting her head curiously. The group exchanged glances before one of them finally stepped forward with a smile. "We are Naiads, spirits of nature." Naruko nodded in understanding and replied, "I was trying to relax and connect with the natural energy around me." "That might be what you sensed. I am a sage, that's my official title where I come from." The crowd parted to reveal Reina, who stepped forward and asked, "An official title? What kind of abilities come with that?" Naruko paused for a moment before explaining, "I can sense the energy flowing through all living things, extending my awareness over a vast area. My speed and strength are also enhanced, and I can use this energy to amplify my natural abilities. It even allows me to sense the intentions of those within my range." Reina observed her carefully before whistling. In response, two mechanical dogs walked to her side and sat attentively. "These are my companions," Reina said. "They can detect dishonesty. So tell me, is everything you've said about your world, the gods, and your abilities true?" Without hesitation, Naruko answered, "Yes, everything I've told you is true. However, the natural energy in this world feels different, tainted somehow. But there's something else." Something that feels angry, upset, even lonely. And for some reason, I can't help but feel frustrated when I look at you. It's a sensation I've never experienced before." As she finished speaking, a soft, mysterious laugh echoed in her mind, and a wave of dizziness overtook her. Before she could react, she lost consciousness while still in sage mode. When Naruko came to, she found herself in a deep forest, standing before a massive mountainside. But something was unusual. The rocky surface was shifting, almost as if it were alive. As she watched in astonishment, the mountain's features rearranged into the form of a woman's face. The colossal figure looked down at her with a knowing smile and spoke. "Hello, Naruko." Naruko tensed and immediately asked, "How do you know my name? Who are you?" The woman's smile remained as she replied, "I believe you've already figured that out. You described me not long ago." Naruko narrowed her eyes. "Gia." The smile widened. "Very good. I sensed you drawing upon my energy, and I became intrigued by your abilities. So, I took a look into your memories. I have seen everything." Naruko's expression darkened. "You had no right to enter my mind." Gia's smile faded slightly. "And yet, you stand upon my domain, drawing from my power. But I feel a connection to you. You understand my pain, don't you? After all, your childhood was filled with loneliness and rejection, for something beyond your control. And now, the gods have placed yet another burden upon you, forcing you into their conflicts. It is unfair to ask so much of a child. I may have sent my children to oppose the gods, but even I care more for them than the gods seem to care for you." Naruko frowned, considering her words. "You have a point." Gia's expression brightened, but Naruko continued, "But this does involve me. From what I've been told, I played a part in the events that led to all of this. That makes it my responsibility to set things right." Gia studied her carefully before chuckling. "You are remarkably wise for your age. But my anger stems from the gods' betrayal. I entrusted the earth to my first children, the Titans. Yet, the gods cast them into Tartarus, leaving me to grieve. The gods harmed my children, and in doing so, they harmed me. Now, I am simply fulfilling my duty as a mother. The gods must be held accountable for what they've done, for the way they have poisoned and wounded me." Naruko looked at her thoughtfully. "Is that why it hurt when I tried to absorb the natural energy here?" Gia nodded solemnly. "Yes. The mortals have long built machines that drain my life force. They carve away at my body for their own purposes, and this has been happening for millennia." Naruko felt a deep sense of sympathy. Gia's pain was undeniable, and in some ways, her anger was understandable. The gods had indeed struck first against the Titans, igniting her fury. A mother's instinct was to protect her children. With a sigh, Naruko finally spoke. "I won't deny that I feel sorry for you. But I know one thing about wars with gods, they never end with just the gods suffering. Innocent lives, both mortals and demigods, would be caught in the crossfire. And I swore to protect innocent lives, not allow them to be lost." Gia's expression darkened, but she remained calm. "You have seen the cruelty of mortals. You have witnessed the flaws of the gods. All I wish to do is cleanse the world, to start anew and return the earth to my children." Naruko returned the stern look and responded, "By harming those who had no role in your suffering? I can't say I understand your reasoning. I may not fully grasp the ways of this world, but I know that the people here today had no involvement in the past events that caused your pain. If this were solely a matter of confronting the gods and there was a way to avoid unnecessary harm, I wouldn't interfere. However, if I played a part in creating this situation, then I have a responsibility to help resolve it." Gia frowned but then sighed and said, "I will awaken again, and when I do, I want you to stand with me. I will return for you." As her words echoed, the world around Naruko faded into darkness. 5th Cohort Barracks. Naruko awoke with a sharp gasp, sitting up as she struggled to catch her breath. A gentle hand rested on her back, offering comfort. She turned to see Reina watching her with concern. Naruko exhaled, steadying herself, before offering a small nod of appreciation. Thanks. Reina gave her a reassuring smile. Not a problem. But would you like to explain why you suddenly collapsed? The nymphs were really worried about you. One moment you looked fine, and the next, you were unconscious and completely unresponsive. Taking a deep breath, Naruko met Reina's gaze seriously and recounted her encounter with Gia. As the conversation progressed, Reina's expression grew increasingly troubled. When Naruko finished, Reina asked, "Are you absolutely certain?" If this is what she said, then it's a serious matter that must be reported to the council. Naruko nodded. I'm sure. But is it true? Did the gods really harm their own parents? Reina's expression turned thoughtful. It's more complicated than simply deciding who was right or wrong. She then explained how Kronos had imprisoned his children to maintain his rule and how Zeus ultimately outwitted him, freeing his siblings and overthrowing him. Naruko listened intently before nodding. That makes sense. No parent should harm their child, let alone something as terrible as that. Reina looked conflicted but eventually nodded in agreement. The council is still deliberating on your place here. If they choose to accept you, which seems less likely now that Gia has taken an interest in you, you will be assigned a commanding officer and undergo training to learn our combat techniques. Naruko shook her head respectfully. With all due respect, I already push myself to my limits in training. From what I observed in the training fields on my way to the mountain, I believe I am quite advanced. That said, I will honor your decision if you choose to assign me to a mentor. Reina frowned slightly, unaccustomed to hearing any doubt cast on her legion skills. Without seeing a demonstration of your abilities, I can't make that judgment. Unless you'd like to spar with me? I can assess your skills based on how well you handle yourself. Naruko chuckled. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I wasn't referring to the new recruits. Naruko disappeared in an instant, reappearing behind Reina with a bronze dagger lightly pressed against her throat. Before Reina could react, Naruko withdrew the weapon and handed it back to her. I was trained by the strongest shinobi in the elemental nations, Naruko stated calmly. I don't usually boast, but if you placed me against the best in your military, I would likely win. Reina's eyes widened as she felt the dagger at her throat one moment and then saw Naruko standing at a distance the next. The sheer speed and precision left her speechless. Regaining her composure, Reina asked, "How did you move so fast?" Naruko chuckled. I was taught by the finest shinobi. When you carry a powerful force within you, you have to grow strong enough to resist its temptations. Breaking free from her daze, Reina gave Naruko a thoughtful look before stating, I want to see your skills in action. I'll arrange a match for you in the arena. Just like you said, you'll face 20 of the best in the Legion. If you win, you won't have to train under a commanding officer, though you'll still follow orders until I see fit to promote you. Naruko nodded and turned to leave but paused, glancing over her shoulder. You know, I've been through my own struggles. I learned not to show my pain. You seem to have mastered that as well. I won't pry, but if you ever need to talk, I'll be training. Reina's eyes widened at how quickly Naruko had read her emotions, but before she could respond, Naruko had already vanished. With a quiet sigh, Reina exited the room, closing the door behind her. Secluded field, outside New Rome. Naruko was refining a new technique when she heard the soft snap of a twig. Turning swiftly, she saw a familiar figure, a short teen from the infirmary, smiling at her. Naruko narrowed her eyes. I don't know what you want, and honestly, I don't care. But if you're here to trouble my friends, I suggest you reconsider. The teen bowed slightly. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Octavian, and I don't care, Naruko interrupted. I can sense your true intentions, and you remind me of someone from my past, someone who tried to harm my friends. If you know what's best for you, you'll stay away from me and from them. Octavian scowled but chose to leave without another word. Moments later, another sound broke the silence. Naruko turned, expecting trouble, but relaxed when she saw Reina approaching. Reina walked up to her and asked, What did you mean about Octavian's intentions? Naruko exhaled slowly. Octavian harbors deep resentment toward you. He hides it well, but energy doesn't lie. I can sense pride in your dedication to the Legion, but I also feel sorrow, regret, betrayal, and something else. A trace of affection that surfaces whenever Jason Grace's name is mentioned. Reina froze. His ability to sense emotions was remarkable, almost unsettling. Noticing her tension, Naruko offered a small smile. Don't worry, Reina. Your secret is safe? I'm not one for gossip. Besides, the way you feel tells me you haven't spoken to him about it yet. I understand what it's like to want something that feels just out of reach. It hurts, but we all find ways to cope. For me, it's training. If you ever want to join me, you're welcome. Reina studied Naruko, surprised by how effortlessly she had unraveled her emotions. After a moment, she nodded. I'd like that. Naruko smiled in return before returning to her training. Dear YouTube family. Hope you enjoyed the first part and found it worth your time. Stay tuned for more exciting content coming your way. Thanks for your support. Anime Dreams, signing off.